I do not think our chair is on yet, Ms. Postal. I don't think she's on yet, or our vice chair. And we do not have a quorum, so I'm just going to give them a few minutes, and then I'll open my mic back up so we can get started. But at this time, we do not have a quorum and waiting on the vice chair and our chair and vice chair. As we go to, as we're waiting on our chair and vice chair, I am going to ask Ms. Wood if she will just, and I'm admitting the chair, Ms. Poston, into the room now. So Ms. Postal should be logging in. I just admitted her. Ms. Postal,
Good
are you
evening,
there?
everyone. Yes, my phone would not let me get in, so I'm gonna try. I think I'm in.
Yes, you
I'm
are.
gonna try to do it with my laptop. So I'll join the call. Are we currently at a quorum, or you were waiting on me?
No, I was waiting on you because we did not have the chair, our vice chair, and we were going to do
Vice
the
Chair.
roll call, but I'll turn it over to
Okay.
you.
My apologies for my delay, my tardiness. It is going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 5:47 p.m.
At this time, Ms. Wood will turn on her mic, and she will do the roll call. And as she do the roll call, I'll ask Ms. Wood to make certain that she call the organization along with the committee representative's name. If you can unmute and answer here for the roll call to establish a quorum.
Good evening. Nate Collins, School Board 4 member. Reginald Durandis, Agate and Axion. Laura Fellman, School Board District 6. Rachel Frischberg, School Board District 3.
Here.
Randy Gabriel, ESC Advisory Council.
Here.
Sherelle Golden, School Board District 1.
Here.
Latoria Hilliard, Coalition for Black Student Achievement.
Sorry, good evening, everyone. I'm here.
Thank you. Gabriela Mendez, Hispanic Education Coalition. Eugenia Millender, School Board District 7. Charmin Postal, Palm Beach County Council of PTA, PTSA.
Present online.
Thank you. Sheila Scott Lubin, Palm Beach State College.
Here.
Imran Siddiqui, School Board District 5.
I'm here.
Thank you. And Christine Tibbs, School Board District 2.
Here.
Thank you. We do have a quorum.
Awesome. Thank you, Madam Chair. As I attempt to log on my computer from my mobile device, not Madam Chair, Ms. Dr. Sheffield, can you proceed with the meeting? I think the next item on the agenda will be the approval of minutes.
Yes, the next item is approval of minutes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. At this time, the minutes were distributed via email prior to this meeting. The minutes were distributed via email previously. If you guys can please proceed with a approval.
I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
This is Randy. I make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Minutes have been approved and seconded. Are there any discussions for the minutes at this time? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved as distributed. Next item on the agenda is public comments. I will say that staff has shared previously with the committee members that we did receive written public comments. Those public comments were distributed to all members of this committee, as well as the public comments will be attached to the minutes for the records. At this time, as we have a very popular agenda item for today, I will ask that all members of the committee, if you can please limit your discussion to 3 minutes and at least twice a go round. So what I will reiterate is for all members prior to public comments for the agenda topic that is coming up, we're going to limit our discussion to 3 minutes, and each member will have 2 opportunities to discuss, just to give others the opportunity to ask their questions and allow staff to answer their questions. Addition to that, public comment, you are entitled to 3 minutes as well for your public comment. Staff do not engage in public comment responses. We receive your responses, and we will reconvene with our meeting after public comments. So at this time, if there's anyone in the room that may have public comments, I yield the floor to you. Staff hearing none. If I'm incorrect, please just jump in. Hearing none, we will move to public comments online in the order that you raise your hand. So if you have a public comment and if you are a public commenter and you have a comment, please raise your hands and staff will call on you in the order that they see you. Are there any public comments online? If you can't raise your hands, you can come off mute and identify yourself.
Madam Chair, you do have a hand raised. I think it's Diana McLean.
Okay. Diana McLean, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I guess, quickly address the reading scores for 3rd grade. My daughter is dyslexic. And this year we pulled out of Palm Beach County schools because the interventions were just not there for her. Number one, she wasn't even getting Spire, but Spire doesn't have a proven track record to be successful for kids with dyslexia. And even my 3rd grader, who is fine with reading, was struggling when it came to the FATS testing. And we just didn't feel like they were getting the proper accommodations and needs met, so we ended up leaving. But I just really wanted to come out and speak and say that the school board really needs to reconsider the Spire program and use more of an Orton Gillingham or Wilson reading program that's based in science, that's successful for not only kids with dyslexia, but just kids in general. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Or any other public comment? Thank you, Diana, for taking the time out.
Yes.
Are there any other public comments at this time? Hearing none. At this time, if there is anyone online or in the room that did not introduce yourself at the time of roll call, I am going to ask that you introduce yourself at time, and immediately following that, I will yield the floor to Dr. Sheffield, where she would give her update from Chief Academic Advisory, the Chief Academic Officer Office, and then she will introduce Mr. Nolan Roy. Nolan, I'm so sorry. You got to tell me how to pronounce your last name, and we will go from there.
So, Madam Chair, I'll start here in the boardroom because this, our meeting, we continue to be hybrid. So here in the boardroom, of course, we have our committee member, Mr. Nate Collins, as he did acknowledge himself during the roll call. But also this evening, joining me in the boardroom is our Director for Exceptional Student Education, whom we will be hearing from later, alongside with our Director of Elementary Education, Kevin McCormick, our Director for Exceptional Student Education, and Adrian Howard, our Director for Elementary Ed. They both are also joining us here in the boardroom, along with our Library and Media Services Manager, whom we will also just give us a media update if there is any Nolan role. And of course, my Executive Assistant, Diane Wood. These are the individuals that are here in the boardroom, but you do have individuals that are online that are visiting as guests that have not yet been identified.
Thank you for that, Dr. Sheffield. At this time online, if we can have all members that are online to introduce yourself for the records. And welcome to those that are in the room. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you. I actually got stuck in traffic, and I thought it would be actually better if I just make it home and stay home and do this call. So for those that are online, please recognize yourself. You are recognized. Introduce yourself for the records.
Gabriela Mendez from the Hispanic Education Coalition.
Hi, this is Laura Feldman.
And if you have already been if the roll was called and you've been acknowledged, committee members, you do not have to recognize yourself, just the public commenters and those who are online who are visiting with us, if you can introduce yourself if you had not been recognized.
Candy caller that's on the call with an unknown. It's an unknown caller. If you can identify yourself, please.
That's me, Rachel Frischberg. I'm not sure how to update it.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Madam Chair, I think we may be good. And the caller, is there someone on with the last two digits 00? That's the phone bridge. Okay, so Madam Chair, I think we're good.
Thank you. You may proceed with the update of Academic Advisory Office.
Okay, again, good evening, everyone. Definitely great being here this evening. I'm going to make my update brief because I do want to make certain that we leave adequate time to hear from the others that are joining me here this evening. The work continued from the Chief Academic Officer, of course, just in terms of working alongside with the team, with the ongoing work, that's being bestowed upon us from Tallahassee. It is great work. We're just continuing to move. And more importantly, as I indicated at our last meeting, we were gearing up for our showcase of schools there at the South Florida Fairgrounds that following Tuesday. And thank you for those of you that did come out. Many of you did stop by to share your support, either with your students that you were looking at the other opportunities that may be available to them, or you were just coming out to support the district. So we definitely appreciate that. Of course, our application process, the window is open, and it will be closing, after the first of the year. So just continue to assist us in just showcasing and telling our families why Palm Beach County is indeed their best choice. Also, I did have an opportunity to attend the Council of Great City Schools, where, several of us attended. We did a lot of work in just collaborating with other districts around the work around the early literacy and how we are continuing to just look and work alongside with our teachers around those most dire need around literacy instruction, looking at those foundational skills. And some of what you're going to hear this evening is the work in which we're doing, particularly around, targeting, outside of the core, within the core, and more importantly, our interventions that we're doing around our early literacy. But of course, when we talk about our literacy here this afternoon, we know that they're around House Bill 7039, where we also now are notifying our parents, not just around our students that may be not necessarily reading, they're behind on grade level in reading, but we've also been doing that with math. But part of the math piece now is also tied there within House Bill 7039. So we're just continuing to work alongside with our teachers or with our schools in terms of just closing those opportunity gaps that we have there, not just alongside with our students, but also there with our teachers. We also are gearing up in terms of getting ready for the second round of our Progress Monitoring 2, which is our new, which is the new state assessment, the FAST, but we're not just giving it in the spring like we've traditionally have done. Right now, we've finished with Progress Monitoring 1. At the end of I should say, when we return from the holidays, many of the schools are waiting to where when we return from the holidays, they will be kicking off looking at Progress Monitoring 2 and just looking at the work that we have started here in the fall and then start making those instructional shifts as our data continues to come in. And of course, there's additional data that is coming in through our formative and summative assessments, whether that be through our, unit assessments, through our formative FSQs and so forth. The shifts are being made throughout the academic year and so forth. So the team here is just continuously working alongside with the principal supervisors, working with the principals, and more importantly, putting on those cadre trainings, working with our teachers, and just looking for ways to continue again in terms of closing those instructional gaps, because we know that there's definitely not a one-size-fit-all. But that will be it for me, Madam Chair, because again, a great part of my conversation will be around our presentation this evening, which is on, our K-5 literacy framework, which will talk about in terms of what is it that we're doing and how we've been doing here as a district. But before we go on to that portion of it, we do want to, again, thank the team for the work that they are doing. This group, our committee around, those classroom libraries or classroom library media materials that are coming forth to the committee to where our schools are wanting to purchase, and we must go through that vetting process, and you all have been very involved in. So at this time, Madam Chair, it's just for us to hear from Nolan to see if there's any updates or anything that he may need from this body.
The floor is open. Thank you, Dr. Sheffield. The floor is open to Mr. Nolan.
Good evening, everybody. So I will keep it really brief. Everything is moving well. We're moving forward with the orders. We're getting a lot of feedback from you guys, and we definitely appreciate that. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. Do remember that positive feedback is feedback. So if you look over the orders and you don't have any concerns, please let us know that as well. That way we can collect that feedback and have it. And then also keep in mind that next week schools will be closed, so there won't be orders uploaded. And then last but not least, once we return back from the holidays, you'll probably see an increase in orders because of state allocations that are being released for direct fundings to the schools. But that's all that I have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan.
Okay, Madam Chair, that is it for our update from Nolan, our library media manager, on the update as it pertains to the library media. So at this time, if you like, we can go into our K-5 literacy framework and the work that we're doing here as a district, if you like.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Dr. Sheffield.
Okay, so at this time, I'm going to, of course, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin McCormick and our Director for ESC, and then Adrian Howard, our Director for Elementary Ed. And I think it would be great, Madam Chair, if we can allow the team to go through the presentation, and then we could, take a deeper dive as it pertains to questions there at the end.
100%. If that's the wish of the presenter and staff, we can go ahead and present and then take questions at the end.
Ready? Oh, good evening, everyone. I'm going to do like an overview of what we do through elementary education in regards to reading intervention. The first slide really talks about the district-wide comprehensive evidence-based reading plan. That plan used to be submitted to the state every year. This year, they made a change in the rule where they wanted it to be school board approved, which we have followed that process. But some of the updates that came with the comprehensive reading plan is that we know that if it is an intensive reading intervention that a child must receive, it must be delivered by a teacher who is certified or endorsed in reading, or a teacher who possesses a literacy micro-credential that is allowed. However, that teacher must be supervised by a teacher that is reading certified. That is the only way that we can allow those students to be in front of someone who has micro-credential. Who's clicking? Oh, okay, thank you. We also know that what also came effective this year was students that receive Tier 3 intervention must be provided daily intervention. And for kindergarten, it's for students who scored below the 10th percentile, according to the PM data from the state. And any time that a student falls in the 10th percentile, whether it's at the beginning, middle, of end of the year, we must start providing those students with interventions. You will see the same rule is also for students in grades 1 through 2, first and second. Those students who scored below the 10th percentile, or they're unable to complete the practice items on a designated grade level assessment during the window. If it's a coordinated screening and progress monitoring, they too must receive interventions by a certified teacher. The only difference when it comes to third grade, the state, instead of saying the lowest 10th, below the 10th percentile, they did below the 20th percentile for third grade students, or for those third grade students who scored a level 1 at the end of the year statewide assessment. Those students qualify for Tier 3 intervention and must be provided daily. And with third grade, the exception is that it must be a certified teacher, certified in reading or endorsed.
Okay, for any student in kindergarten through third grade who exhibits a substantial deficiency in reading or has characteristics of dyslexia based on all of the data we have, they must be provided intensive, explicit, systematic, and multisensory reading interventions immediately following the identification of the reading deficiency or the characteristics of dyslexia to address his or her specific deficiency or dyslexia. So dyslexia-specific interventions is defined in the state board rule and shall be provided to students that have characteristics of dyslexia. It goes on with recent legislation to talk about elementary students with substantial deficiencies in reading or that have characteristics of dyslexia must be provided with daily intensive intervention. This next piece is underlined because it's word for word out of the rule. The primary instructional strategy for teaching word reading is phonics instruction for decoding and encoding. Instructional strategies for foundational skills may not employ the 3 cueing system model of reading or visual memory as a basis for teaching word reading. Instructional strategies may include visual information and strategies which improve background and experiential knowledge and context and increase oral language and vocabulary to support comprehension, but may not be used to teach word reading. So we had it word for word in there because we wanted to make it specific to what the rule is currently reflecting.
Oh, okay, thank you. Again, for third grade students, this was effective as well in House Bill 7039. Third grade students that are retained must be provided with intensive interventions in reading, based on the student-specific reading deficiency. And of course, that intervention must be evidence-based, explicit, systematic, and multisensory reading instruction, and it must all be grounded in the science of reading in regards to phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension, and other strategies that may be prescribed by the school district. If a student has been identified with a deficiency in reading and or math, we will provide them with a PMP. And what we highlighted here was the new addition to PMPs, because we've always done them in the past, is that when you write the PMP, goals and benchmark for student growth in reading or mathematics must be listed on the PMP. So with that, we have a reading intervention handbook that schools have access to for guidelines for supporting students. We know that no student is the same in regards to reading intervention, so we have made decision tree guides and cut scores based off our comprehensive reading plan. So we have revised the language around guidelines when providing Tier 3 intervention for students with characteristics of dyslexia. You had to revise the elementary evidence-based system program and strategies to support supplemental instructional materials. So which means we had to use only evidence-based materials or program and strategies. And then we revised our individual progress monitoring plan, which I just referred to, that it has to be goal-specific for students to have individualized goals based on their progress monitoring baseline scores.
Okay, on this slide here is an example of the 2024 elementary evidence-based systems, programs, and strategies. In this document, I know it's a little tough to read, so I'm going to go ahead and describe it for you. On the left side here in the column, it has the reading intervention. These are a few examples. The top one is Sound Sensible. Next one is Spire Reading. The one after that is Wilson Reading System. That next column to the right is the targeted reading area. In this case, on this specific page, it's reading phonological awareness. The next one is the progress monitoring tools that are supported for each respective intervention. And that last column is the level of support. So it could be Tier 2 supplemental or Tier 3 intensive. There are 33 pages of this document in what's available to schools within the school district of Palm Beach County. Each respective school identifies the appropriate reading interventions that they would implement at that school site.
Right, and it's based off of students' needs.
It's all based off of students' individual needs and the data, multiple sources of data that schools use to be able to determine what intervention is appropriate.
And then the next slide that you will see is the K2 reading intervention decision tree. So we, of course, we use the most recent FAST or STAR, but like Kevin referred to, is that we don't use just one form of data to decide if a student needs intervention. We use several data resources. And then we follow the decision tree based on the student's needs. What's important to know here is that we continue core Tier 1 instruction in classrooms, and when students need Tier 2 or Tier 3, that is outside of the literacy block. So for Tier 2, you do small group targeted instruction to meet the instructional needs of students for an additional 30 minutes outside of the reading block. And then you also do the same thing for Tier 3, but it must be explicit instruction to meet the needs of students, and it is done on a daily basis. And then sometimes the time allotted depends on the student's needs. So it could vary a little, but again, we really try to set schools up to meet the students' needs, their deficiencies. And then here you'll see where, I thought you was getting ready to talk, I'm sorry. The Reading Intervention Decision Tree Guide for grade 2, we decided to put this in here so you can see the different forms of data, and when we look at that data to determine when students will need, would need intervention.
So this top column here reflects the time of year of when you would be looking for the data, or looking at the data to determine the level that the student is performing at. And as you go down the columns, it talks about September to November, December to February, and then on between March and May. And all the scores that we have from the various resources to be able to inform the decisions for the team to make.
The next, you're not ready?
We're good.
Thank you. The next slide that we have provided is, we have in our Blender webpage that teachers have resource to. Oh, I didn't have 3.5. I apologize. You can go back. The next reading intervention decision tree that you see is, of course, grade 3 through 5. And it kind of mimics exactly what you saw in K through 2. We're just letting you see that we do it through all of the grades. So 3 through 5 intervention. Again, we look at multiple sources of data to decide what type of intervention a student may need.
That being said, we have this same tool on the secondary level as well to inform middle schools and high schools as students progress through grades. And then the reading intervention decision tree guide to go along with that, set up the same way as the K2 with time of year, multiple data sources to be able to inform the decisions.
And then what you will see now on the screen is our K5 reading intervention. It's located in Blender for teachers to know where those resources are to provide those interventions, as well as our reading intervention handbook. Students can always go back to this one site and find the decision trees and everything they need to provide interventions. That's kind of what I just referred to. It just clicked. So if you had clicked on the button, that would have been the next screen that the teacher would be able to have access to the resources to provide intervention for students. That's it, Dr. Shoko.
And so, Madam Chair, you could see from a very high level in regards to the approach in terms of our framework, what it looks like here around outside of our core, because we all know that we have a core, and when we talk about the interventions, it's responding to those interventions for those students that are having difficulties within the core and providing those additional interventions. And as the team has indicated, of course, the intervention is going to look different, and it should look different for each kid, or depending on terms of exactly what is the skill or the deficiency that are being targeted for that period of time. So at this time, Madam Chair, I'm going to turn it over to you because I'm sure that there's a series of questions. But definitely, I think most importantly, what we gather from this is definitely not what we called a one-size-fit-all when we start talking about responding to the interventions for our students. And again, we did not talk about the core because when you're taught, we separated the core and the interventions, and they should, because we are digging deep for those students that are having those challenges. So I'll turn it over to you, Madam Chair.
Dr. Sheffield, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Sheffield. I am going to open the floor for questions. Thank you, Mr. McCormick, and everyone, all who were presenting. I may have missed a name, so I'm not going to offend anyone. I am going to open the floor in the order that I see online. If I can remind everyone that we are going to limit our conversations to 3 minutes, and so that everyone have the opportunity to ask the questions that they would like to ask. So the first person that I saw was Sherelle Golden. You're recognized.
Hello, thank you. All right, so I have a question about the PMPs. You said on there that there's going to be a goal setting for them. So who's going to set that goal? How are the parents going to know? How are they going to be managed, or how are they going to know if they made the goal? Also, you discussed on there about how the teachers will have access to be able to pick from an area where they feel that child needs the help. Is that available to all schools, or is it just a designated school, or does the principal have to put in to buy that particular, like the Wilson or whatever they need for that student? I think that's a question for Ms. Howard.
Okay, so your first question was regards into PMP and setting goals, correct?
Right.
Okay, so the goals will be based off of the different resources or different data that they have gathered from the student. So whatever areas of weaknesses is when they would sit together as a team to set the goals for the students. So when a student is on a PMP, which is a progress monitoring plan, parents are notified that they're on that plan, and that comes from the school side. And then
the only thing I want to add to that is if you have a student in the ESE program, or if you have a student who is an English language learner and they have a plan, and that plan specifically has a goal for reading, then that specific plan can take place of the progress monitoring plan.
Okay.
You don't need to have two.
So how often are you checking in? How often are you measuring to see if that person is on track? That's the biggest question, because if you set it up and there's no monitoring to see where they're measured, how often is that done?
the recommended time is when you're trying to provide an intervention for students. You at least want to do a minimum of 6 weeks to see if that intervention is working.
All right, thank you. And the next question?
Well, I just want to go ahead and add to that because depending on the intervention you're using, that specific intervention determines the progress monitoring tool and then the approximate time it takes to be able to see results based on the intervention we're providing. Often it's 6 weeks, some it could be 4 weeks, but it also depends on the data points, which means how often it's implemented, for how long it's implemented, and all of that is determined by the specific intervention. And of course, that's based on the data that we have to determine the need.
All right, thank you. Next question. It's regarding the information that's available to the teachers. So you said that the teachers can go in and see what that child needs. Is that available for all teachers, or is it just specific to that school?
Are you referring to the data? Or you
No, if you go up where you said that this right here, that one screen that you have before then, where they can go in and pick whatever they need to do the intervening with. like the Wilson and all of that. Is that
gotcha.
available to every school, or is it just specific to one school?
So every school has their own catalog, I guess I would say, of
Okay.
resources to be able to provide intervention for each respective area of reading. So say one school would have Wilson, another school may have Spire. Both interventions address phonological awareness, and they're both research-based and Norton-based.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Golden. At this time, the unknown, you are recognized. And if you can state your name again for the records. I want to say this, is that Rachel that's unknown?
Yeah, she indicated during the roll call that it was her, so it would be Rachel.
Okay. Rachel, you
Hi,
are
yes, sorry about that. So I have several questions, and I'm just going to tell them first so we can write them down. One thing that concerned me greatly, and I did research on this a while back, is that the cutoff for Tier 3 is the lowest 10%. The cutoff for Tier 2 is the lowest 24%. A few years ago, I did research on this against other districts. They take kids under 40 percentile and put them into interventions. We are waiting too late. They fall too far behind. If in second grade, if they're reading at the 11th percentile and then we expect them to pass the third grade FAST test, we're creating an impossible situation. So we need to look at those cutoff scores and compare them to other big districts. I think that is a huge issue, and I want someone to do research at the district and compare them to the other big districts that did well and see what those cutoffs are, because we need to get the kids into intervention earlier. Second, when you looked at the chart for intervention, it says there's or. So like we look at the FSA score, the FAST scores, the benchmarks, and a few other ors. The problem with that is benchmark is holistic. You're not looking at specifically at phonics there. If they can decode, these kids might be good at looking at the pictures. They might be good at deducing the words, not knowing how to decode. So that is another issue, that it should not be or, because we need to look at, if they have a higher level in that, but lower levels in phonics, that's a characteristic of dyslexia, and it's not this child's going to be missed because of the way that's written. Third is I want to know what training you're doing to make sure teachers know characteristics besides, and also the science of reading, what the 3 cueing system is, what it means to teach phonics. And my fourth question is, and actually my fourth question is before my third, because I want to know, and you can answer this yes or no, are you going to give questions about core instruction today? Are you going to give a presentation on core instruction, or is it just going to be on interventions today?
This presentation is on intervention.
Okay, because I was also told that you were going to talk about core, because it is imperative that we do core, we do core phonics instruction in core, because if our kids are not getting it, and we pulled foundation, so I want to know, and if this is a question for later, is what core phonics instruction are you doing in our primary grades? That should, what's being done, because we don't have a program
Okay,
besides
Ms.
benchmark.
Rachel, I guess, Madam Chair, are we taking questions? I have the team is here. Now, so I'm asking in terms of what is your question?
So my question, I guess this is in core intervention, what are we using for our phonics program to teach phonics systematically and effectively? We used to use foundation in a lot of schools, which was a half an hour core lesson. Benchmark does not do that, and they don't spiral back enough. It is. I was on the adoption team for it. It does do phonics in a sequential order, but it presents the topic maybe 3 times. And our children that are not dyslexic but still need explicit instruction in phonics, there's a study that says 40% of children need that, are not going to be getting that if we don't have that, if we don't have a core phonics program being implemented. And I also wanted to hear, I heard that we're now partnering with UFly, but I've heard that not all schools are able to get the materials. And I want to know what's the barrier for not
Okay, Ms.
having
Rachel,
that?
I will have to ask you again. Because you're going, fast and furious. So we're trying to answer your questions. So what is your question? I mean,
Well, I
I'll
had
start with
several
the
questions.
So Rachel, let me just jump in. I'm sorry, Madam Staff, I didn't mean to cut you off. Rachel, if you can ask the question as it relates to K through 5, as it relates to the presentation, K through 5 literacy framework, if you can ask a question specifically to that.
The first question was, I mean, you want to go back and forth because I know I wanted to answer them all. My first question was that we need to look at the percentages that we're using to put people into tiers. Because I feel that if you compare the percentages to other big districts in this state of Florida,
Rachel,
they're much lower.
Rachel,
Yes.
Rachel, just for the sake, because there are other hands up, what is the specific question? Because what I hear is a recommendation
No,
and not a specific
I want to know.
question.
I want to know why you chose 10% and 24%, and how you compared them to other large districts in the state of Florida, because I believe they're a lot lower. And I think I'm asking you to look into raising them.
Yes.
Rachel, pause there and allow them to answer the question, because I hear you asking the question, but then you're debating your opinion about this. So
yes,
pause and allow them to answer the question.
So
Did you
the
get the question, staff?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect.
So
Okay.
the reason why the 10th percentile is identified for students getting intensive Tier 3 intervention is because that's what's required by state rule. Same with Tier 2 with the 24%. That is what's required by state rule. That does not mean we don't go above and beyond and intervene sooner. We're constantly in professional learning communities, PLCs, to be able to analyze data as a result of the core instruction that we're implementing, and also within school-based team meetings, if response intervention is formalized. That also happens on a recommended monthly basis to be able to determine the response to that intervention and determine if it's the most appropriate intervention for that child. So I hope that answers your question.
My question to that is, can you prove, can you show me in the legislation where it says 10 to 24%? Because I am sure other states are not doing that. And I think that is, we've assumed this information without facts to back it up. And that scares me because I can't see that being correct, because about 22% of the kids fail the FAST exam. So if we're not starting intervention, at 20, we're starting intervention, Tier 3 intervention at 10%, we're gonna have a lot of kids failing our FAST, and we continuously do. So I would like someone to go back and investigate if we can raise those numbers, because I think they're too low. That's what I'm asking, and I'm proposing. I don't know if we can do a proposition for that, because I think those numbers are lower compared to other big counties. I did research on this like 3 or 4 years ago, and I also don't think there's a state mandate. And I also think to service our students more effectively and to prevent retention in 3rd grade, that we need to step in when the number isn't so low, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Rachel. If staff can answer that question, and after staff answer that question, Rachel, I am going to call on the next hand because your 3 minutes are up, and we can come back.
Other questions you have them, so I would like those answered as well.
Yes, ma'am. We will entertain the question that is currently on the table, and we can come back to the questions that you may feel that was not answered. But I do want to give other members an opportunity to ask their questions while we have staff on the line. So at this moment, go ahead, staff, and answer the previous question that was asked before I made my statement.
There's no other information to provide. I responded to Ms. Frischberg's question.
Can I put a motion in place to investigate those cutoff scores and to see if they're comparable to other big districts, because we became our reading scores dropped significantly in the past year, and I noticed 2 years ago other big counties had higher percentages. I can send the data.
Rachel, if you can type your motion, if you could type your motion in the messages, and as long as you have a second, we will, as as we are in a hybrid fashion and it takes a little time, we are going to move forward while you write your motion in the a message. I am going to recognize Ms. Feldman at this time.
Thank you very much. I have possibly a follow-up question, but my initial question was, there was mention of including math and other topics into the progress monitoring. Is that relating to the impact of dyslexia on those topics, on those subjects? Or is that including that information with investigation to possibly other disabilities? For example, dyscalculia is, and I know this is all about dyslexia, but I am also curious, as a second part of my question, as to whether or not there are screenings done for dyscalculia, and how the district is working to overcome math anxiety as well.
Laura, to your question around the math that I mentioned earlier, the math and the dyscalculia is all part of the most recent House Bill 7039. So that's where math and the dyscalculia came into, part of House Bill 7039. And I can tell you, of course, as we continue to wait on the guidance as it pertains to the state, as pertains to the resources, the available resources that will be utilized as we are working towards those math interventions, we have moved forward. We have created and work alongside in creating something very similar for those math interventions that, in the manner in which we have done, for our reading support. But I will let Ms. McCormick talk a little bit more in pertains to what we are doing as it pertains to the dyscalculia for those students that may be exhibiting those characteristics. But there is a screening process there.
Wonderful. And is there anything that's being done to help address math anxiety, both on the part of teachers and students?
Math anxiety or testing anxiety?
Math.
So for specifically, when you talk about anxiety, we're talking about mental health. So we have lots of various systems of support in place for students who are experiencing anxiety, significant stress, or other types of emotions that they're having a difficult time coping with. We have behavioral health professionals on each and every campus to be able to support students if and when needed in a variety of low-level and higher-level supports related to intervention, counseling, and often, meaningful relationships with adults is a good step in the right direction to be able to help assist with addressing those emotions that children are having a difficult time dealing with when it relates to learning reading, writing, or math. So does that help Laura address?
It helps a little bit, but there are actual recommendations, I've read research about it, of curriculum, optimal curriculum that can help reduce math anxiety and help prevent the development of that. So while, yes, there is obviously that psychological component of it, but also dealing with the actual instruction can be helpful in helping to make sure that we reduce that from the very beginning and are not setting up activities within the classroom that are going to exasperate or help students to develop that. So, and the other part is also there might be math anxiety with that teachers have themselves, and that this is a cyclical process, so that if a teacher or a parent is math anxious, they're more likely to have math anxious children and students. So there are approaches. I can talk with you about it after the meeting at some point and give you the information that I have about it. And maybe that could be something that could be useful in the future.
Thank you.
And is there a universal screening being done for dyscalculia like we have for, we're working towards with dyslexia?
Right now, we have common assessments that we use to determine if a child is performing based on the standards of that grade level. So those common assessments are utilized to be able to determine if they're meeting the standard or if they're not. And if they're not, that's the sign we use to be able to, or the data we use to be able to start the problem-solving process. So to answer your question right away and specifically, the answer is no, we don't have a common screener. All students use iReady Math. That also has an assessment at the beginning of the year that measures specific skills to determine a child's performance in math. That is one data source we would use, and then also the common assessments that I alluded to within core instruction.
Thank you.
Thank you. And there goes the timer. Oops. I knew it was gonna make noise, so I wanted to stop. Hi, Mr. Lincoln. I just wanted to address Mr. Lincoln's comment. Typically on these calls, we have to be mindful that public comment does not, we do not entertain public comments after the public comment section or opportunity. I will entertain your question at the end of this meeting. So it is recognized and staff can take a look at that and share with staff that's in the room. At this time, are there any other hands? And Ms. Mendez, would you like to come off of mute and ask your question?
Yeah, it was a question for, I think her name is Rachel. She shows us unknown. You mentioned the curriculum of this university, Prager EU. I heard about that curriculum, and then I read in August that Superintendent Burke said that we have not purchased it, we have not sanctioned its use, and it's not going to be used. So I wonder if you have a different information. Because I also asked him that question and he said the same thing, that no. So do you have more recent information about the adoption of that curriculum?
Rachel, are you on mute?
I don't know that. I am just a parent. That what I was talking about was UFly. It's by the University of Florida, and I was told by a teacher in the district that some schools are allowed to purchase it if they have the funds and use it, but if you don't have the funds, you can't. So I'm wondering, what is the district done with, or what, this is a question, what are the approved interventions that the district, that are evidence-based, that the district are now using? Could you give us a list of them, the major ones that are being used, especially in Word, and teaching the ability to decode words for that issue?
Thank you.
Is the staff able to answer that question, or is that something that they can get back to us with?
Sure, of course. We do have this document right here, FY24 Elementary Evidence-Based Systems, Programs, and Strategies. So this document, like I said, is 33 pages and can be provided. And these are all the evidence-based programs and strategies that we support as a school district to be able to address any respective reading deficit.
Thank you.
And I do want to add that this is aligned with and is tied to our comprehensive evidence-based reading plan. So it's very important for me to just make that notation, which has been approved by the board and is already, of course, submitted to the state.
At this time, I'm going to recognize Ms. Sherelle Golden, and this will be your second time speaking. I think at this time, yes, this will be your second time speaking. Please, you are recognized.
Okay, I have a question about the, at the beginning, you talked about the teachers and how they have to be certified. And if the person isn't certified, they had someone else that was backed up or something like that. I don't know the specific verbiage that you use. If the teacher shortage, that concerns me, how are we going to make sure that these third graders, these elementary schools, are going to have adequate coverage to do what this program is set to do if they have to be certified? Is there something in place to take care of them or anything of that nature? Because I know that there's a teacher shortage. So if we have teachers that are supposed to be certified, if you don't have those teachers, what are you doing as a backup?
I can't speak for each individual school as regarding their vacancies, but I can tell you that as a district, we have notified every principal, and they are aware that if it is a retained third grader or a student that needs those Tier 3 interventions, is that it must be done. The intervention part must be completed by a teacher that is either reading certified or reading endorsed. The other thing that I shared with you was that if there is a shortage of teachers, if there is a teacher that has the micro-credentials in reading, they are allowed to provide that intervention as long as they are monitored by a teacher that is reading certified or reading endorsed.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just to add to that quickly, we offer teachers the free course out of the University of Florida, Flamingo, to get their reading endorsement. So it's basically 5 college courses that a teacher would take. Once those courses are completed, they would then be able to move forward and get that reading endorsement added to their certification. I'm also on the school district bargaining team for teachers. So teachers this year got a 7% increase in pay, which historically is very significant. So I'm hoping that we are able to attract more teachers, but also teachers from our neighboring counties to be able to come here and provide that service to our students.
Great. Thank you.
And I want to add to that, because you're the one that asked that question, Ms. Sherelle, and I do appreciate you leaning into that piece, because you get it in regards to the importance of that instructional pedagogy and us making certain that we have the teachers that are working there, not just, with our most vulnerable students, but with all of our students, that they have those necessary skills. And in making certain that they have them, we understand and recognize that we must continue to staff develop our teachers and making certain that they have the necessary tools that it is that they need. So there are ongoing professional development and trainings and cadre trainings that our teachers are involved in, that our principals are able to select from, that menu of trainings and so forth, based in regards to where they may see that skill gap, if there is one there for that teacher. That's why it is so important that as we utilize our scope and sequence and we have our curriculum mapping outline, it just gives some very tight guidance for our teachers and for our principals. It also allows us to plan ahead in regards to those professional development offerings as it's leading up to those particular content areas and so forth, particularly around, I should say, around the literacy piece, since we're talking around the reading.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I appreciate that.
And then, we also, and then Ms. Howard may want to just talk about, we do have some work that we're doing with the University of Florida, with the Lassinger, with the Lassinger Center, which is really leaning and doing a lot of work around the, the science of reading, really looking at that small group instruction in terms of how we are really working alongside there with our students. But this training is not necessarily there just for our teachers, but we also have the principals that are attending alongside there with their teachers. So right now we have select schools that are participating. We're also training district staff to where we can continue the work once we're done with the initial phase of this training. And I think the conversation also came up, I heard someone say earlier, as we talk about the various interventions and support, particularly around phonics per se and around the core. And we all know that Benchmark, it is our core for literacy. I'm proud to say when we started this, when we started with our core with Benchmark, I think this is our second full year. I think it's our second full year with Benchmark. We started with K2. It was great to have a high quality instructional core there for our students and for our teachers. And as we continue to look and we find those gaps and so forth, then we continue to look for those pieces in terms of how do we, what can we use to attack some of those instructional gaps or those fillers and so forth. You know, we have some additional trainings that's going on with Spire. We have some additional training that's coming on with foundations. You know, these are where we are attacking as it pertains to around some of those phonics skills, some of those foundational pieces, and so forth. So what I don't want to walk away from here this evening is in regards to where the team of we're not attentive in regards to what the data is saying, but what we do recognize and understand that we have to, it starts in terms of looking at those foundational skills. And I like to say from the time our students hit us, coming into the public school system, but this start before they even get to us. But let's talk about them when they come in from pre-K to even kindergarten. That's why we have this whole new initiative now that we're doing around the T2K, around the transition to kindergarten, because we really and truly trying to lean in regards to into those foundational skills. This conversation tonight is just a small piece of the work that is being done in regards to really looking at what's happening as a system as it pertains to our literacy and how do we engage in getting our students to where they are indeed reading their own grade level. We all recognize the gap in terms of with our data, but in terms of having to stop and peel back this layer, this takes, it takes at the hands of everyone, right? So there is so much more in terms of what's happening here that you may not hear of tonight as you hear me talk about just some of those pieces outside of our core instruction. As I said, the ongoing trainings and so forth, from Spire, from foundations, and so forth, because this is definitely not a one-size-fit-all. If one person told me that, you know, I have, you know, my entire class there that's working on, you know, one particular intervention, as it pertains to, you know, my students that are struggling, then I'm going to question that, because are we truly meeting the needs of all of your kids? Because their needs are just so different. But I don't know, Kevin, if you and Adrian want to add any more to that. I just wanted to stress around some of that work that we're doing.
Thank you. Yes. So I think there's a little bit of confusion maybe outside in the world. I do know when we start doing some really intense training around the foundational literacy skills this week, we did tier the schools based off of need and based off of we only have so much staff to provide that professional learning opportunity for teachers. But we heard the cry about some more phonics instruction and phonemic awareness, and the training has really allowed a lot of teachers to get the pedagogical skills necessary to teach those foundational skills around the science of reading. And I know I could be off on numbers, but we have trained over 600 students. We're working with about 43 of our elementary schools and teachers in grades K through 2. So I just wanted to add that piece. Kevin?
Yes, another aspect of addressing students with a profile of dyslexia and making sure that we're building the foundation of reading early on in a child's educational experience. Back in 2018, we worked with the Education Foundation, initially engaged University of Florida, but they ended up moving forward with their UFly and Lassinger work. We worked with the state of Florida and to get a grant with them and the Ed Foundation to do multisensory strategies instruction. So we took some of our literacy experts who have been highly trained in reading intervention we sent them to an Orton Gillingham training, a huge team of them. They came back. We worked with the University of Central Florida to build a coaching and training model, and then rolled out multisensory strategies annually since then. We started with a small group of schools training kindergarten and first grade teachers, and then expanded doubled it the following year, doubled it the year after that. And then we were fortunate after the pandemic hit to get one-time grant funding through American Recovery Plan to be able to scale it even larger, to be able to make sure that more teachers had access to the training. And not just teachers who are reading teachers. We wanted to be sure we built the capacity in any teacher who was willing. So we started with K-1 and then expanded it to make sure that reading intervention teachers, supplemental academic instruction teachers receive that level of training to be sure that as the student shows a need while they're working with them, that they have the teacher pedagogy to respond to that real time in using multi-sensory strategies to be able to reiterate those specific skills and teach them deeper to be able to hopefully obtain those skills, the student obtain those skills to mastery. So the other thing I wanted to address is back in those days in 2018-19, we also established a webinar for all instructional personnel, including, I'm going to go to PE coaches and chorus teachers. Every instructional staff member was required to take a dyslexia awareness webinar. So every year after that, we required all new hires who were in teaching positions or instructional positions to also take that training. So I'm confident up to this point that all instructional staff have taken a dyslexia awareness webinar so they can understand the signs and symptoms and what to do when they see them. That's all for me.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McCormick. At this time, I am going to read the motion. There's a motion on the floor by Rachel. Rachel, if you can just go ahead and type your name in the chat, because right now it says unknown. But the motion, and Rachel, while I read this motion, I do read it that it's a motion and debate all in one. So you just tell me where the actual motion is. I am motioning that the district staff look into raising the cutoff percentages to enter into Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions.
That's the motion. That's that's the motion, and then I give explanation since in
Okay,
third grade.
Okay, no problem. So at this time, there's a motion on the floor that district staff look into raising the cutoff percentages to enter into Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions.
Because right now, just so everyone knows, it's at 10%.
Give me 1 second. That's the motion. I need a second to entertain the motion.
If we have a question about the motion, can we ask?
As long as we have a second, we can entertain the motion.
I'll second the motion. This is Laura Coleman. I'll second it.
The motion has been made that the district staff look into raising the cutoff percentages to enter into Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. A second by Laura Feldman. Are there any debate? And Sherelle, you were the first that had a question. Go ahead.
So the question is that if they entertain it, if they look for it, where's the bar? Where are we going to measure it against? So in the motion, it's just a motion to look for it, but it doesn't say where you want it to be measured. So you say about
the motion.
If you think about it, it's very general. So if you want them to look at it, yeah, okay, we looked at it, but this is what we come back with. But if you want something to be investigated or a motion for them to look at it, can we include in there to put in the largest districts, like you said, measured against, Dade County, Broward County, whoever those large counties are, because they can still come back and say we investigated, but we're going to keep it at 10%. You understand what I'm saying, Rachel?
I understand completely. That's very smart of you. So what I'd like it to be is comparable to or at the same level as the highest of the biggest districts, because we don't want to shortchange our children. So if other districts are helping kids, at bottom, 30%, and we're only doing it to 24%, we want to get this extra 6%. So I do like that, and I'd like to hear, what district staff has to say about this. I know it would require more staff. And actually, I found out maybe like 5 years ago. these
Rachel,
numbers were
hold on
higher.
1 second. Rachel, 1 second, because there's a motion that's on the floor, and I want to entertain the motion so that I can properly bring forth that recommendation or that motion if I need to on Wednesday. So the motion is on the floor. I did hear what sound like an amendment. I heard what could be an amendment, but if someone would like to type an amendment, I can entertain that amendment. While we do that, let's go. Is there further debate, Ms. Dr. Mendez, regarding this motion? Because right now we have a motion on the floor.
No, it wasn't about this.
Thank you. Cheryl, did you have further discussions regarding this motion?
No. If someone's going to amend it, I don't have any other question.
I'm going to try to amend it.
Okay.
Okay.
Guys,
Randy,
I'm sorry.
Yes, I had
Randy,
a question. I've been searching the internet.
I'm sorry, Randy. I'm sorry, Randy. Is the question regarding the motion that's on the floor?
Yes, to raise the level of percentage for students that we intervene for, correct? Is that
the motion that's on the floor is the district staff look into raising the cutoff percentages to enter into tier 2 and tier 3 interventions.
okay? And I found something, I believe it is done by, the test is administered by Renaissance, is that correct? It's a Renaissance test, the company? Does anyone happen to know?
Are you referencing
The
this
assessment
particular-
from the state is
Mm-hmm.
from Renaissance?
Yes.
That's correct. It is from Renaissance, and it is from 3 through 5 is Cambium.
Okay.
And if I could just say something, I don't know if I'm out of line or protocol, so I apologize. I just want to be clear that the rule that we presented was the state rule telling us that we must address the students that fall below the 10th percentile or the 20th percentile. It is not saying that we won't address students that fall at 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15, but they're making sure that we don't leave out the students that score 10th for K through 2 percentile and 20th for third grade. But the decision trees help us decide that as well when students fall into deficiency ranges. Even for 4th and 5th or any grade, you have to address those deficiencies. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
And I believe the recommendation from Renaissance is intervention under 25%, under 25%. Scores. So up to 10 is intensive, and then anything under 25 would, under 10 would be intermediate, and then under 25, anything under 25 would be intensive. And I believe that the company recommends that. Am I correct? Is that where we?
Randy, there is a motion that's on the floor, and at this time that we are entertaining the motion that's on the floor. Is this? Excuse me, is your point a amendment to the motion? Because I don't hear debate, I hear, I'm sorry.
My question is that the state's percentiles, do they come from the company that wrote the test?
How does
I'd like
this
to know
relate
that
to the
before I
motion?
vote on a motion.
Oh, got it.
Randy, I just want to tell you that if you score 1 on the FSA, right now, 30% of our Palm Beach County students did in third grade. They're at serious risk of being retained and going to summer school. So we're not even helping some of the kids with the percentages if you do the math. Because we're only helping our bottom 25%. and just tier 2. So we are missing 5% that will never receive intervention, but are possibly in very grave danger of being retained. And
Just a quick comment on that, if I can. We are not saying we're not intervening on these kids who display a need, especially if they score a level 1 on the performance assessment, state performance assessment. I just want to be crystal clear that that is not what we're saying. This slide that you see in front of you now is reflecting the guidance we receive from the state.
Yeah, I think we're all clear with that, but we want to see it in writing where it says that it's going to be higher than what you have printed there. So we're all aware of what you're saying, that you will address it, but we just want to make sure that we have it where we can see it. That's the motion. So let's talk about, so who else has questions about the motion? Because I'm ready to vote.
So currently, the motion now reads that the district staff looked into raising the cutoff percentages to enter into tier 2, tier 3 interventions to be compared to the other large districts in Florida that have the highest cutoff scores.
Okay, I second that.
That the motion was brought forth by Rachel. Rachel, please share your last name. I apologize, I don't see it. Fishberg, I think it is. But I don't want to assume. Fishberg, thank you. And seconded by Sherelle Golden. Are there any further discussion on the motion that's on the floor?
just one question. Should I change it to not say, should I just change it to I am motioning the district raise the cutoff scores to enter into, instead of saying looking into? That way, I want them to raise it. I don't want them to just look into it. Should I change that?
It looked like
I didn't.
Well, it looks like they would have to see it first. They'll have to look into it and then come back with their recommendations or what they found, what they discovered. Because if we tell them that they'll have to raise it, well, we don't know what the other information is for those other districts. So I think they should to look for it first, investigate.
Prior to calling you, Dr. Sheffield, I am going to share this. Dr. Mendez, your hands is up for something else, and Randy, is your hand up for something else as well? Prior to calling you, Dr. Sheffield, I just want to say that we, as the Academic Advisory Committee, we can send a recommendation only to the board. However, it is up to the board to decide what they're going to do. We do not, that's where it's at. So this motion, this recommendation, if passed, will go to the board, but it is up to the board to decide where this motion is, where these items or this particular request is going to go.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right, so I saw one additional hand as far as debate or question or comments. Dr. Sheffield, regarding the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask Ms. Howard. I went back to, try to get it back here.
I have it, Dr. Sheffield.
Went back here to our decision tree. Because I think that there is, and I don't know, maybe it's a misunderstanding or something in regards to what it is that we are not doing or what's not there. So I'm going to ask her to highlight that once again, please. Ms. Howard.
So earlier, and we may have gone too fast, and so for that I apologize, but when we look at the decision tree guide and we're providing intervention for students, if you look at I don't know what page it's on, so I apologize, 13, when we're looking at different types of data, if you look in the third column for Tier 2 intervention, you can see that if a student falls between the 10th and the 24th percentile, is identified as a student that would need intervention. And then we have it, as Kevin talked about, during different months. So we go back and we look at it again, if like December and February, when they take the FAST or STAR assessment, if they fall within certain percentiles, those students qualify for receiving intervention. So we're already looking at kids that fall, of course, below the 10th percentile, but as well, if you fall between the 10th and the 24th percentile, you can receive reading intervention. So I just wanted to make that as a note.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions regarding the motion that's on the floor or debate? Are we ready for the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Because there are people who are saying aye that are not members of the committee, I am going to ask, if you are only committee members if everyone can lower their hands at this moment online. If you are a committee member and a committee member only, if you are in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. Dr. Mendez, your hand is still up, so if you're in favor, okay, there we go. If you're in favor of the motion, please raise your hands at this time. Okay. As the chair, I will not vote. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9 online. I'm not sure if we have anyone in the room.
I'm voting nay.
Okay. Please lower your hands if you are on the call and you oppose. Please raise your hands. And I did get
Opposed.
Okay, 1 opposed. Motion carries with 1 opposed. Motion carries with 1 opposed. So this motion will go as a recommendation to the board during the regular board meeting. At the board meeting this coming Wednesday, it will go to the board during the AAC report. Excuse me. Next hand that was up, unless we have we are at 7:12 with time, and our agenda ends at 7:15 p.m. Just giving you guys that we do have 3 minutes left on the agenda. Laura Feldman, you are recognized.
I move to extend the meeting by 10 minutes.
By 10 minutes. Are there any objections to extend the meeting by 10 minutes? General consent. By general consent, are there any objections to extend the meeting by 10 minutes? There are no objection. The meeting will be extended until 7:22. Dr. Mendez, your hand was up.
Yes, thank you. What I've seen is that we are addressing this problem from a deficit perspective, where we see, okay, the students have these problems, the students don't know, the students this and that, so they need to receive reading intervention, and some of the students who have some learning disabilities or different, they're different in terms of neuro differences, need to receive specific support, and I think that's great. But I think that we should also think about the other side of the equation. How are we teaching these students? Because, like, as a teacher, when my students don't understand a topic or a concept, I look for different ways of teaching it so they can understand. I'm not saying, well, my students don't get it, so I had to, send them to summer or do some special program. I had to rethink the way in which I teach, and I had to be responsive to their identities. So I like to know, first of all, to know if there is some training for these reading teachers on culturally relevant pedagogy, because that's the kind of teaching that makes sure that the kids can see things to read that are interesting, that reflect who they are, that allow them to see themselves in the readings and get engaged with the readings. And if the teachers are not doing that, and I know some of them don't even know what it is because some of the teachers are my students. If they're not, I like to know what the district is doing in terms of giving these teachers training on our professional development on culturally relevant pedagogy for teachers who teach reading. And if they're not doing it, I would like to propose that. So the question is, are they doing it? And if they're not doing it, I would like to propose training on culturally responsive teaching or culturally relevant pedagogy.
Just one
Staff
follow.
would like to take a bite on that?
Yeah, just one follow-up question. Is this related to reading intervention or for culturally relevant teaching practices?
It's related to reading intervention because you can't, if we are saying, okay, we had to integrate more students, not only those students who are in the lowest percentile, but all the students. We had, even if we do interventions, the interventions had to be relevant to the students.
Understood.
Now, if the teachers who are doing these interventions know that, great, because they may also use that for everyone, not only for the students who need intervention.
Well, all certified teachers are required to have a level of ESOL training, so that is the base of their cultural training. Above and beyond that, when we talk about reading and reading development, often when you talk about different cultures, you talk about students who have a first language other than English. So
That's not culturally relevant pedagogy. It's
Okay.
very different from ESOL. It's completely different.
Okay.
It's a pedagogy for teaching everyone and in English, so it's nothing to do with ESOL.
Okay, I guess the only other comment I could make is the text that we purchase and the instructional materials that we purchase are specifically purchased to make sure that they're culturally diverse. Outside of that, I can't comment to that question.
Thank you. At this time, if the staff cannot answer that question, the specific question that Dr. Mendez asked, if we can just have that response back, we can have it via email to the committee or back during another meeting, at another meeting, if necessary. Any objection to that, staff?
Yes, I'll invite our Director of Multicultural Education in.
Okay, and Dr. Mendez, if you can follow up with an email to staff to ask your question directly, I think that would be more appropriate as well, so that.
Specifically to whom?
Specifically to staff, Ms. Diane Wood, the person who sent the email.
Okay.
To invite
yes.
us to this meeting, and she'll get it to Dr. Sheffield and to the staff that's necessary. The other hand that I would like to recognize that was up, if I'm not mistaken, was Randy Gabriel. Randy, was your hands up? Okay, perfect. Perfect. Last item on the agenda that we will entertain at this time is, and actually, because I did share that I would entertain this, Ms. Staff, did you get the notice that the reporter from CBS 12, Matt Lincoln, would like to a follow-up for someone to follow up with him so that he can present, or I'm sorry.
Okay, yes, Matt. Hello, Matt. Matt knows he will go through our communications team with Angela Langford. He could work with Angela, and we'll follow up with him. We'll follow up with him.
Perfect.
Through Angela.
Perfect. And then, not a problem, Mr. Lincoln. I also shared the link where you would be able to view this recording. The last item on the agenda, and being with the 3 minutes, and I will object to an extension of the time because there are staff members that have been here since that has been here since 7 o'clock, and we have been on this call. I will entertain this last motion item on the agenda, a motion that all K3 grade students have explicit, systematic, evidence-based phonics instruction daily for 30 minutes. Okay, was it updated?
Yeah.
Okay, I think there's another update. The motion is that the district staff look into implementing explicit, systematic, evidence-based encoding and decoding instruction daily for 30 minutes for all K3 students. Is there a second?
I motioned it because I think it's important. This
We're not
whole
at
bill
debate
is
yet.
about.
We're not at debate yet. I need a second in order to debate. Laura, you're recognized. Are you seconding this? You're on mute if you are.
I apologize. No, I was doing something else.
Not a problem.
I have a
Okay,
question
so
from the business.
is there a second to this? If not, the motion dies.
I have a question. Is this what the new law requires us to do? Teach systematic phonics whole group? Isn't that true? Or is that not true? Is it only for intervention? I thought it was also for whole group because so many kids are lacking it and causing issues. Can someone answer that from the staff?
Staff, is that something you would, is that something you are ready to entertain as it relates to the presentation that was presented tonight? Or is that is that something that would have to come back to this committee at a different time?
I can answer. I think she asked, is that a state rule that it's 30 minutes of phonics instruction, and it is not a state rule?
Mm-hmm. But it is a rule to teach explicit phonics, correct?
You're supposed to teach explicit phonics, yes, but it is not a rule. So within Benchmark, they do teach phonics, and we're in the process of making sure that teachers have the pedagogical skills to teach phonics explicitly within their core reading block.
I would like you to look into the program because I don't think it gives enough repetition or it doesn't spiral back enough. I was on the committee to accept that as it is, and I looked at certain phonics rules, and they were only taught 3 times with very small, short lessons. So I don't think it's extensive enough, and especially with science of reading saying it's so important to teach phonics explicitly and completely that we really need to focus on it. We used to have schools that did foundations, and I heard that I heard it was banned, and now I heard that it's now allowed in schools. Is that correct?
I'm going to ask staff. We are at 7:23. We are governed by Robert Rule of Order. If Rachel, I am going to ask because I think our presentation was on K through 5 literacy framework, and I think we have kind of derailed in some instances in this meeting and asking questions that's above that framework. So what I'm going to ask is that you put that question in writing to staff, Ms. Diane Wood, and I am going to ask staff to come back to us with the additional staff support where we can have some of these questions answered at a later date, because again, we can go all night. This is a very important conversation. This is a very important topic, and there are some very passionate members that are on here regarding this topic. And I want to be mindful of staff who has been there all day, as well as members of this committee who have other commitments to go to, including myself. So I am going to please ask that we send that email to staff through Diane Wood, and have staff, return back to us when the appropriate staffs are available to answer those questions. Mr. Lincoln, I see your comments. Again, we do not typically entertain comments with, we do not, for Mr. Lincoln and committee members, we do not entertain public comments after public comment after the public comment area has passed, which was at 5:50 this afternoon. I personally will take a look into, or will personally request that, or look into your request, Mr. Lincoln, and see what's going on with Mr. McCormick, or with, I'm sorry,
No, I will
media.
follow up. Madam Chair, I will follow up with communications in regards to what his concerns are. I know Matt very well, so I'll follow up with Angela.
Thank you very much. And then please keep us abreast on that follow-up as a member of the public who is sharing with the committee that regarding this important topic. So if there are no other questions, we are beyond our time. We will not entertain any additional motions at this time, and unless it is a motion to adjourn.
This is Randy. I will motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn at 7:25. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great evening.
You also. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Bye-bye.